There are a lot of weapons in Helldivers 2. I'm willing to bet that you can't name all of them off the top of your head. There are some weapons that are just forgotten, and that is what we're talking about today. The forgotten weapons of Helldivers 2. When I think of a forgotten weapon, it's a weapon that I never consider using. A weapon that fails to fill its niche. It might not be terrible, but it's definitely not gonna be your first choice. The AR-23C Liberator Concussive. The Liberator Concussive is one of the oldest assault rifles in Helldivers 2. This is a weapon that has only gotten buffed over the years, but it is still behind the times, and it truly does deserve better. The Liberator Concussive trades damage and fire rate for a native drum magazine and stagger force, so it's actually alright at holding back waves of enemies for a while, but with the release of weapon customization, every single Liberator variant got access to drum magazines, taking away one of the most valuable parts of this weapon, and making it accessible to the entire Liberator family, making this weapon feel a lot less unique. So how do we buff this weapon properly without making it overpowered? Well, I've been playing a bit of Custom Galactic War, which is basically a modded version of Helldivers 2, and they made some dramatic changes to this weapon, including explosive damage. It's nothing crazy, and it has a very small radius, but it adds a little something to the weapon that I think makes it feel much more viable, especially when it still has a much lower fire rate compared to the other Liberator variants. This is just one of the many great ideas that Arrowhead should take from the Custom Galactic War, and it would definitely make sense with a weapon like this. But unfortunately, in the real game, this weapon is underperforming right now, and that sucks because this is a very fun weapon to shoot. Every shot is visually impactful on both the user and the enemy, and the magazines last a long time, never letting the enemy get a rest from the stagger. But I'm here to make sure that all of you Helldivers get plenty of rest with today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. A good sleep is incredibly important for a healthy lifestyle, and lately I have had horrible sleep, never getting more than a few hours. Thankfully, I was contacted by Manta Sleep, and they sent me one of their Manta Pro sleep masks. And I gotta tell you, that it makes a very big difference if you are woken up easily by things like sunlight, because no light is ever gonna make it through that mask. Try as you might, it is totally pitch dark once you put the mask on. And best of all, it is very comfortable to wear in bed, even if you sleep on your side like I do. Manta Sleep has a variety of different masks on their website. They even have one that has built-in Bluetooth speakers if you're the kind of person that needs white noise to fall asleep. So go check out Manta Sleep. I'll have them linked in the description of this video, and you can use code GRANDMOFF at checkout to get 10% off your order. Thank you, Manta Sleep, for sponsoring this video. The STA-52 Assault Rifle. This is a weapon that truly does deserve better. It escaped a dead shooter franchise just to end up being totally outclassed in Helldivers 2. When this weapon came out, it was a decent assault rifle. Nothing special, but it was alright. The main advantage that it had over the other assault rifles was good fire rate with a very large magazine. But with the release of weapon customization, this weapon quickly became outclassed by the Liberator Carbine, because every single Liberator variant could now equip drum magazines, taking away the biggest advantage of the STA-52, much like what happened to the Liberator Concussive. So how do we fix the STA-52? Well, there are a bunch of ways to buff a weapon. You could give it incredible ergonomics, or give it a ton more damage, but I think a surefire way to get people to use the weapon and test it out is to just give it medium pen. Yes, that is a huge buff, but I think it would be a good experiment to test out the effectiveness of the weapon, and if they decide it should be medium pen, maybe they could tweak the damage to make sure that it isn't totally overpowered. No matter how they want to buff it, they need to do something, because this weapon has no niche, and it has no customization, so you can't change its role at all. It is really unfortunate. The STA-11 SMG. You had to know that the STA-11 would be here. This is yet another killzone weapon that is just getting shafted by the current balance of the game. The problem with this SMG is the exact same problem that the STA-52 has. It has no niche. It has nothing special about it. If you have the Knight from the Super Citizen Edition, which I imagine that many of us have, this weapon is practically useless in comparison. Everything that this weapon can do, the Knight can do better. Buffing this weapon would require a creative solution. There's already a medium pen variant of the Knight in the game, so maybe they just need to give the STA-11 a ton of damage or something. I don't know. But again, they need to buff this weapon somehow, because right now, there is no reason to use it if you already have the Super Citizen Edition of the game, and it comes from a very expensive war bond, so there aren't many reasons to seek this weapon out at all. The M90A shotgun. The M90A is obviously one of my favorites, but Arrowhead seems very intent on making sure that this weapon performs absolutely nothing like how it does in the Halo games, and they keep giving us good alternatives to the M90A, like the Sweeper. In Halo 3, the M90A has barely any range, but it can kill most enemies in a single shot, and it can even damage enemy vehicles. So, that is my proposal to Arrowhead. Give the M90A the worst spread imaginable, give it a ton of drag, and make it heavy pen. Right now, I don't think there's a really good reason to take the M90A over the Sweeper. 100 extra damage doesn't mean a lot compared to medium armor pen. So why not just totally rework the M90A? Give the M90A a hyper-specific niche and make it more accurate to the source material. I see literally no issues with doing this, and I hope that Arrowhead will consider this, or that at least the Custom Galactic War will consider this. The SG-225 SP Spray and Pray. Let's be honest, most of you never use the Spray and Pray. I don't use the Spray and Pray because it doesn't do a good enough job at filling its own niche. Back when the game came out, the Spray and Pray had an advantage over the standard breaker because it had drum magazines. And you know what I'm gonna say next. With the release of weapon customization, the breaker got access to drum magazines, and ever since then, I haven't even looked at the Spray and Pray. There's no reason to even consider it, in my opinion. Even though the Spray and Pray fires a totally different ammo type, it is still so underwhelming to use, and it is very frustrating. So how do you buff a weapon like the Spray and Pray? Well, take another look at Custom Galactic War, which gave the Spray and Pray more pellets per round, resulting in more damage, and giving it a better fire rate than the standard breaker. This is enough to give it a proper niche and actually live up to the name of Spray and Pray. If Arrowhead wanted to buff this weapon in any way, they should look to the Custom Galactic War because they managed to make it feel usable without making it feel overpowered. The Spray and Pray needs to live up to its own name, so hopefully Arrowhead will give it some kind of buff soon. The Laz 5 Scythe. I've always found the Scythe to be a bit underwhelming. It is far from the worst weapon in the game, but it could absolutely be better. The easiest weapon to compare the Scythe to is the Dagger. The Dagger is basically just the Scythe as a secondary, but it has more ergonomics and less damage, technically making it into a side grade of the Scythe even though it is a secondary weapon. I think that the Scythe needs to feel much more powerful than the Dagger, and it should naturally serve as a middle point between the Dagger and the laser cannon. So I think that the Scythe should have medium pen, which is another great change that Custom Galactic War already thought of, and guess what? It's not overpowered at all. It feels like a well-balanced primary weapon. This is a really easy change, and it definitely belongs in the base game. This would make the Scythe much more viable, much more fun, and it would just make sense with the scaling of secondary to primary to support weapon. It would make sense within the logic of the game. The Laz 16 Sickle. The Sickle was one of my favorite weapons for a long time. It is very fun to shoot, and it was actually quite good for the time when it came out. but time has not been very kind to this weapon, and with the release of the double-edged sickle, there is almost no reason to really use this weapon, not in my opinion. Yes, it is much safer to use, so this weapon does have a purpose in the sandbox, but the insane damage and penetration of the dickle is just way too good to pass up. I think that the sickle either needs to be medium pen, or it should have a much larger heatsink to give you more damage over time. As it is right now, the dickle is just a better option, especially if you have armor that can resist fire damage. The Plaz 1 Scorcher. In a vacuum, the Scorcher is a good weapon. It can definitely get the job done in most missions, but more often than not, people will be using the Purifier instead. The Purifier is more versatile, it offers a higher skill ceiling, and it is just plain fun to use. Again, this doesn't make the Scorcher bad, but I'm just saying that the Purifier has a lot going for it in comparison. So, how do you buff a weapon like the Scorcher to compete with the Purifier? I think a simple way to buff the Scorcher would be to give it a bigger ammo capacity per battery, letting you shoot more before reloading and dealing a lot more damage per battery, of course. You could also give it some more spare batteries. Right now it has 5 spares, which is a decent amount, but giving it more would definitely make it more viable. I think these changes would make the Scorcher into a more fun and more forgiving version of a plasma primary, but it wouldn't give it the absolute peaks and valleys that the Purifier has. They would both still keep their roles in the game, but the Purifier would be the high skill ceiling variant, and the Scorcher could be a very easy to use, simple to understand plasma primary. The P2 Peacemaker. If you're a veteran player, if you own most of the war bonds, when was the last time that you unironically used the Peacemaker? Like legitimately used it to be effective? The last time I actually used the Peacemaker was on my PC account, and I'm like level 10 on there. This is a hard one to buff without just massively increasing the damage and giving it medium pen or something, so I'm not sure how I would change the stats of the Peacemaker, so I think that the best way to buff this weapon and a bunch of other secondaries would be weapon customization. I really think that we're at the point where we should have secondary customization, and it would benefit a basic pistol like the Peacemaker a lot. Imagine if the Peacemaker could have extended mags, or even drum mags, a better sight, maybe even some kind of bayonet attachment, or customizable ammo. There's a lot of things that we should be able to do with customization that we can't do at all right now. So that is my suggestion to Arrowhead. Please continue working on weapon customization, and maybe we'll get an update for it late next year or something like that. The P19 Redeemer. The Redeemer is the only other base game secondary weapon, and in my opinion, it has also been somewhat left behind by modern balancing changes. On paper, it has pretty good DPS, and it can be used in some situations to mag dump an enemy in an emergency, but it's still not very good when compared to other superstar secondaries like the Talon or the Senator. This weapon is in the same boat as the Peacemaker, where it seems fine on the surface until you use it. So I am once again asking for secondary weapon customization. There is a lot you could do with these basic weapons, like the Redeemer and the Peacemaker, and it has been one of the most requested additions from the community for the last year, so hopefully, one day, they will add it to the game. This part of the video is just me begging for goddamn more customization. The G23 Stun. Now, the stun isn't a bad grenade at all. It actually perfectly fills its niche, and it is pretty good at what it does, which is, of course, stun enemies. It can stun all kinds of enemies, and it is a great little tool. However, you need to consider that you're giving up explosives to take the stun, and now it looks a whole lot worse. I think that the stun grenade should apply stun level 4, which is the highest level of stun in the game. The only thing in the game that can apply stun level 4 is the stun pods booster, but considering that people barely use the stun grenade as it is, I don't think it would be an issue to buff it to stun 4. They recently buffed the stun grenade by allowing you to carry 5 of them at once, and we all know that 5 is more than 4, but I still feel like you should be able to carry more of them. If you can carry 6 frag grenades and 6 pyrotech grenades, then I think that they could even allow you to carry 7 or 8 stun grenades. 6 at bare minimum though. I don't think anyone would object to that, and considering that you are giving up the ability to destroy enemy spawn points and other buildings, you deserve an equally useful tool in that slot, and frankly, I don't bring stuns very often, as I would rather bring the dynamite or frags, for example. And there you have it, a small selection of what I consider to be forgotten weapons. But what do you think is a forgotten weapon? Do you agree with my takes at all? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, I want to thank all of my Hell troopers. Swickety, Archangel Shipyards, Dirty Nightmare, Findas16, ODST Exotic, John Droll, Tinfoil Freak, Melek Paragon 9231, Jack of Nothingness, Thak Dub, Kermite Official, and SES Champion of Democracy. Thank you all for continuing to support my channel, it means a lot to me. And that is all I have for today. This is Grand Moff Togan of the SES Prophet of Dawn, signing off.